Well, welcome, guys, to another weekly Team Hangout. We usually have these on Thursday at 4 p.m. CEST, and we have different team members join us on a weekly basis. For this week, we are here with Ryan, our COO. Hello, Ryan. We can see you as well. How are you doing
Great.
today?
I am doing well, I would say. I'm doing all right. It's Thursday, right? So
It
it's
is. It is.
we're almost at Friday, so that's quite cool. I guess this is the first time people are seeing me on one of these calls, right? Because normally we do these somewhat with a Twitter icon or something, yeah?
Yeah, for the Team Hangouts, I believe that this is the first time you're joining us on the Team Hangouts, if I'm not mistaken. We've had a couple of AMAs in the past for the community, but not in these official weekly series. So welcome. There's the first time for everything. Well, as a great welcome to you joining, we actually have a ton of questions waiting for you. I have to say,
Okay.
it's one of those sessions where we have the most questions we've had so far. We might have to split this one in two and continue with a part two another time if we might not be able to get all the questions. But without further ado, we can just get into it since there's quite a lot to get to.
All right, okay.
Sounds good. Okay, let's get started. So the first question we have for you today, Ryan, is can you tell us a bit more on the expected utility in the period after DuskEVM goes live for community and for node runners?
Yeah, sure, of course. So utility after DuskEVM goes live. Yeah, so I think a lot of the utility will obviously come from the stocks application, which I think you've talked about a little bit. Have you talked about that in the community chat?
We've had a couple of talks about it. Hein and Thomas especially. We've had Thomas on, who is more involved in working on the development of stocks. So he gave an explanation of a broad explanation of the stocks application.
Okay. Yeah, well, I think that the stocks application, people trading tokenized securities and other such financial assets will obviously be a big part of the expected utility. Node running as well, which I think the value of that will go up, and I think these will be the two biggest things. But I would also hope as well that as we've got an EVM compatible chain, we will see people coming in, and we are indeed talking with some people about bringing their dApps in that they've built on other platforms and building them here on Dusk. So I think there'll be a lot of different types of utility coming up after the EVM launch.
Makes sense. Makes sense. A lot of the utility will come with the stocks application and the upcoming dApps that will launch thereafter.
Yeah.
Stuff. The next question is around the DLT TSS application. So some people are wondering how that application is coming along and to learn a bit more about the process, because we assume it's not just filling out a filling up a web form in like 5 minutes and getting it done, but it's more so a more rigorous process of back and forth with the regulators. So we kind of want to know more about what that looks like in practice, and yeah, you can tell us more about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I suppose we got two things we want to mention straight off just to set the basis. You can hear me okay, right? Just to check. It's all
Yeah,
good.
crystal clear.
Okay. So two things we want to do to set the basis for this DLT TSS application is that first off, I hate the word application. Like I absolutely can't stand this word application because I think when you think about the word application, you're imagining the kind of form you fill in when you want to go to college, or maybe a bank loan, or renting a car, or what it. Okay, I'll just go ahead anyway, I guess, and then George will catch us up when we. Yeah, so to talk about this application, I hate the word application, as I said, because it gives an indication that it's a form that you have to fill in with like a few boxes and your name and address and phone number and so on and so forth. It's not like that. Okay, so what we have to do for the DLTR application is effectively to go through all the policies and procedures that exist for MPEX, the MTF, and to change all of them to take into consideration the DLT element of the securities, right? So what happens in the case where you're acting as your own CSD? What happens how does it affect counterparty risk? How does it affect payment risk? If you have a previous policy that says that money has to be received by bank transfer, how do you then have to alter that to allow for things like stable coins and such like that? So it's not really an application. It's effectively rewriting all your policies and procedures, and then you're sending an application to the relevant authority to say, okay, please find attached all of our policies and procedures. We believe we've made all the relevant changes to allow us to get this DLTR, and please have a look over them and tell us if you disagree. So that's the first part of explaining why this is such a long process, because as you can imagine, there's around, at MPEX, I'd say about 37, 38 different policies and procedures, all of which are very long, all of which need to change, and all of which reference each other. That's the first part. Second part is that it is somewhat arguably more difficult to apply as a pre-existing MTF than to apply as a fresh applicant. So there are other companies out there that have applied for this DLTR application, and what they have done is they've set up their company for the specific purpose of building a DLT-based MTF, right? And then they've been able to build their policies and write their policies and procedures from the very beginning, taking into consideration that this eventually has to be a DLT-based thing. And so in that case, you can build this stuff from the very beginning, taking into account the DLT elements. So it's arguably a little bit harder for a company which has not previously had DLT elements to add them in than to write it fresh with this knowledge in mind of where you want to be at the end. It's easier to plan a journey when you know what the destination is. So these are two of the reasons why this application takes a very long time, and why I don't like the word application, because it sounds like a thing you just fill in a few boxes. So in terms of where we are, I would say that we are extremely close to being able to pass all the relevant policies and procedures to the regulators. The vast majority of them have been rewritten and restructured where necessary, for the point that they can now accept DLT-based assets. And I am confident that we will be able to send any last remaining documentation, let's say within the month.
That sounds great. That sounds really good. So after the application is for lack of a better word, after the form is submitted, it's just a matter of waiting for the regulators to approve, and then it's pretty much out of our hands, right? Unless they come back with more questions or they need more information. Okay, that's exciting. It's getting
which of course could happen, and that's the unpredictable part, obviously, because again, I would say that it's quite difficult for us to really estimate this kind of thing. Just to put it into context for people that are not familiar, so you've got 3 different types of license that you can get under the DLTR. There's the DLT-based CSD, a DLT-based MTF, and a DLT-based trading and security system, which is basically a CSD plus an MTF. So there are companies out there that have applied for the DLT CSD and got it, but that's not the same thing we're applying for, so it's not really relevant. Then you have companies, like I mentioned earlier, who have applied for the same thing that we're applying for, the DLT TSS, because we want the whole thing, but which were freshly built companies with the specific purpose of getting DLT-based assets from the very beginning. Also not relevant. So you can see this one of 2 ways. On the one hand, you can say they were able to build their regulations, policies, and procedures specifically from the beginning, so perhaps they had an easier time of it, it was faster, maybe. There is an argument in the other direction, which is to say, as a pre-existing MTF with a long track record of financial stability, security, and dealing with the regulators, maybe will be quicker. It's hard to say. And this is one of the downsides, or possibly upsides, of being at the cutting edge of regulation, is you just can't really predict. There's not a lot of precedents to call on. But I'm very confident we're in a nice position.
Okay, that sounds really exciting then. Hopefully it all goes smoothly after the application is in, and it makes a lot of sense. And thank you for giving us the broader explanation of how it actually works, because I don't think a lot of people really understood, myself included, of exactly the details around that. So thank you.
Correct.
The next question would be around marketing practices and plans. So someone is asking if you could give us an idea of what we should expect or how we're thinking around the current marketing plan for the launch of DuskEVM, as detailed as you're able to share at this moment.
As as detailed as I'm able to share. Okay. Um, let's just say that no. Let's be as direct as I can about it. Obviously, we can't share everything. We can't share specifics. You know all this kind of stuff. I don't need to repeat that. Let's talk about what the marketing plan looks like. It's a two-stage plan. So first you've got the Dusk EVM marketing campaign, and then you've got the stocks marketing campaign. These things won't be launched together. They'll be launched in sequence to one another. So you can think of this as two stages of a long campaign. The intention along the way is to highlight both the features that are coming. So in the case of Dusk EVM, it's mostly to do with come and build, come and get involved, come and help participate in the Dusk network. In the case of the launch of stocks, it's about come and get hold of assets, securities, come and be a user, come and buy, come and hold, come and sell, come and trade. But also in both cases to pay a lot of attention to highlight our partners that are coming with us, our launch partners. So the people who are coming together with us in the EVM launch, who will allow sort of better liquidity, better features, better functions, and then the partners that will be coming with us in the stocks launch. So the people that will be providing the assets, the people that will be helping to trade the assets and this sort of thing. So you will see two quite different campaigns. Dusk EVM will be mostly marketed towards come and join in, come and participate, come and build, come and help us to launch. Stocks is much more focused on this idea of come and buy, come and trade, come and benefit, come and build your financial future with Dusk.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. And sorry, I turned off my camera just because I'm having some difficulties with the internet. So
That's
I just
okay.
want to make sure I get. There's a bit of delay in the video, but I want to make sure I get your explanation at least on there. Thank you. Yeah, that makes sense. Now, also in terms of marketing, could you share some of the team's learnings so far in marketing, in terms of like what worked and what doesn't work based on past experiences?
What's worked and what's not? Yeah, sure, absolutely. What we found is that the best marketing, the best engagement. So in terms of people, engaging with posts, interacting with posts, and so forth, talking about posts, and the best price impact. All of these things have come from the same type of news, which is what we would call actionable news. So the bonds, ITN, when it was launched, partnerships, things like that. We found that the community and the wider crypto space is much more responsive to actionable updates. So very much exactly as you would expect. When the update is along the lines of, hey, here's something that you can come and do, we get a lot of interaction with that. Whereas when our announcements are more along the lines of, hey, here's something that you should know, I'm sure that the community appreciate that, but the interaction, the engagement stats show that those posts are not as interesting and don't do as well. So we've also found that in terms of short-term visibility, KOLs have been quite good. AMLs and X spaces, even the Discord spaces here have been good, but they serve a kind of a different purpose. So what they do is they mix marketing together with BD and tech. So basically exposing people to the BD and tech side of things that normally they might not get from marketing alone.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. So these AMAs are also a good chance for us to get in touch with the different projects that were the guests for BD opportunities. And some people may be wondering, why are you talking about marketing? And we haven't actually made this official yet, but some people did pick it up in chats from different chat breadcrumbs that Emanuele Carboni has indeed taken a step back from being the CEO. So someone has also asked if we can provide more information around why that is the case and why you were the one that took over marketing, and what is your marketing experience?
Sure. Okay. Let's think about a couple of different things, then, shall we? So again, it seems like every time I answer a question, I'm saying, well, let's look at these two footnotes before I answer the question. But I do think the context is important for any question. I think communication is quite clear. So, as a small to medium-sized company, people wear many hats, and even at the C-suite people wear many hats. Emmanuel Carboni did a great job here as CMO. At the same time, he was the CFO, so he was handling finance. So he was wearing two hats. Now I'm the COO. I was head of business development before, so CBDO. I've now taken on the CMO role. So I'm also wearing many hats. I'm also the head of legal here at the company as well. So this is pretty normal stuff here at the sort of small and medium-sized company level, at the tech startup level, even at the scale-up level. It's pretty normal for people to have multiple hats. So first off, I don't want anybody to think that all of a sudden, because the title CMO has disappeared, that this means we're not paying attention to marketing. Not at all. It just means that the responsibilities have moved from one person to another. That's all that is. They've moved from Emma Carboni to me. So then the question becomes, okay, why have the responsibilities moved over? Well, partly, actually, mainly, it's because of the fact that we're moving into a very different phase of our business. And I think everybody is getting aware of the fact that big changes are coming with the EVM launch, and particularly with the stocks launch. We're moving from an era where building and developing was the main thing that Dusk was doing, to an era where actually growing business, growing users, growing TVL, growing volume on chain and transactions is the main driver of the business. And as a result, at a period like that, your marketing changes quite dramatically. Your marketing is no longer about saying this is what's coming, right? This is going to be great. It's going to be amazing, to this is what it is and you should come and use it. And to the point where actually marketing and business development, or you can call marketing and sales, however you want to do it, become kind of two parts of the same assault, a double-pronged assault on the market, in that marketing's responsibility becomes about getting users into the platform, and business development is about getting assets and products into the platform for the users to buy. And they're both just as important as each other, because you can't get users in if there's nothing to buy, and you can't get assets in unless there's users who want to buy them. And so it's very important to coordinate between these two. So it made so much more sense at this point in the development of Dusk for marketing and business development to be run from a single point, and that point is me. And we have then a great group of people who are now interacting much better because they're part of the same single department. We still maintain two separate teams. Let's be clear about that, because marketing and BD, as I just said, have two separate sets of responsibilities, but it's very important that they're able to act in unison, I should say. As for my personal experience in marketing, yeah, I can answer that question pretty clearly. I've been involved in many startups in the past in which marketing, as I said, people wear many hats, C-suite wear many hats. I've run marketing for companies before. In addition to that, I'd also like to point out that I was literally a professor of marketing at the Chinese University of Hong Kong. That was my job prior to joining Dusk. So I'm pretty confident in my own abilities to do this job.
Great, great. Thank you, Ryan. Yeah, that's a really good explanation. And actually, I had a question. Let me try to find it, because this was further down the list. But since you are talking about your experience from China and the Asian market, someone was also wondering, since we haven't really talked about your previous experience in the Asian market since you joined, but what does your personal knowledge of the Asian market bring to the table for Dusk? And are there any relevant developments in Asia that we as Westerners are missing out on? Maybe have something interesting to share. Doesn't really need to be Dusk specific, but they were curious about your Asia background.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we could do, I suppose, a separate AMA just on, I suppose,
Right.
my time in Asia, my Asia experience. Sure. Let's talk about what's relevant for this. So, I mean, I wasn't hired for Dusk because of the Asian experience. So it wouldn't be accurate to say I was brought on to give an Asian dimension to the business. That would be false. It would be misleading to the community to say that. That's not what happened. Was it useful? It was, of course, useful at a few phases. So you may remember the round, I think it was about a year ago now, we made a pretty serious effort to enter the Korean market. I was, of course, quite involved in the decision to go down that road. We use agencies on the ground because that's much more efficient. But when we were selecting the market, I was involved in that process. We were choosing between 3 or 4 decent Asian markets to look at. I was the one who was a big advocate of the Korean market. I thought it was the best choice for us. Whether or not that buff is really, I suppose it depends on numbers. But it was useful. So I suppose in that sense, it was useful to have me around for that, someone who understands these markets and who was able to give an advice on which one to look at. But Dusk, at the end of the day, is a Europe-centered product. So we shouldn't fool ourselves into thinking that this is somehow a sign that there's a big assault on the Asian market coming. That's probably not the case. But in terms of what have I learned there in the Asian market? Well, again, so much. I think the single biggest thing to pick out, especially from China, I would say more specifically, is that you just have to be adaptable to thinking. You have to think fast, you have to move fast, and you have to change fast. I think anyone who's worked with Chinese firms, anybody who's looked at Chinese firms realizes that the adaptation, the movement, and the change, especially in business development and marketing, is so quick. And we're in a global market, so we have to be able to think that fast too. I mean, my own personal experience was of this directly. For example, one of the first tech startups that I was ever involved in, we were actually building a corporate training application. And we were maybe about 6 months into really building out a very nice mobile application on iOS. It was very good. It was very effective, and we were beginning the process of building our application on Android as well. Now, not to go too far down a rabbit hole, but back then in China there wasn't such a thing as a Google Play Store. So you, as a developer releasing an Android app, you have to release about 17 different versions of the app because there are about 20 different Google Play stores that are managed by local Chinese firms. So it's a very expensive process. And at the same time as we were doing that, we learned that WeChat was about to release a function called mini programs. WeChat's a very popular messaging app there in China with some similarities to WhatsApp, although not really. And this mini programs thing effectively allowed you to run a full-scale mobile application, but inside WeChat, which completely solved a distribution issue. Because now you just need to ask a Chinese person, do you have WeChat on your phone? And of course, the answer is yes. You don't need to worry about maintaining 17 Android stores and an iOS store app at the same time. And so we adapted and threw our applications away overnight and immediately went all in on WeChat mini programs. We were one of the first ones to do that. So that's not really relevant to this specific case, but I'm saying that, I learned from that you have to be very, very adaptive and very willing to move very quickly. And if you're pursuing something that just doesn't make sense, you don't stick to it just because, I don't know, that was your mission from the start. You have to adapt to the circumstances on the ground.
Right. Yeah, I think that's really interesting to talk about. And like you mentioned, we could probably have a whole session just on that. But I guess this also shows, our flexibility in choosing the best move forward for Dusk as well, and also probably why we went the road of the DuskEVM and being EVM compatible. One of the questions was also, how do you see now
Yeah.
the pivot to EVM? How do you see that this move affected the future of Dusk? And in your opinion, are you, how confident are you of Dusk's success because of this move?
Very confident. I'm very glad you brought that up, actually, because a slighter, or maybe we should say a slightly more awake or more caffeinated version of me would have made that direct link. That's an excellent link to make. Yes, exactly. So the adoption of the EVM layer on Dusk is exactly an example of the thing I was talking about. We have been building a fantastic piece of technology, and I think everybody knows it's a wonderful piece of technology. It's secure, it's private, it's great. But we were staring down the face of a market which just demanded EVM compatibility. It's just the reality. Exchanges want EVM compatibility. DEXs, lending protocols, bridges, they want EVM compatibility. And it's not just about the fact that they want that, but also that, of course, any attempt to integrate a technology which they're not comfortable with comes with much higher prices and much longer development times. And in the end, it was just a matter of saying, okay, look, we have this very obvious reality staring us in the face. Why wouldn't we pay attention to this? And now we are. And that's great. And that's a fantastic step forward. It shows that we've matured as a company. It shows we've grown up as a company. And it puts us in a great position because it massively widens the possibility for integrations. It makes it so much easier for developers to come over, to port their dApps over from other chains and rebuild here on Dusk, and really gives us a huge opportunity in the space. And I think that's fantastic. And I will also throw on top of that something which is a bit more speculative, but I believe is true, which is that since we're in a highly regulated market, Europe, it's not entirely beyond the pale. It's not entirely unlikely that at some point the regulators might start favoring certain chains or certain standards over the other, because at the end of the day, when a market becomes more mature, establishing standards is something that you do to keep value in the market and to make sure that new people can join. And I think the EVM compatible standards are a very likely set of standards that they might choose to pick. And so this is also future-proofing Dusk as well. So if my energy isn't clear, I'm very excited by this. I think it's a very smart decision. Very, very smart decision.
Yeah, I could certainly feel the excitement, and I'm excited just thinking about it as well. And another question was also looking more so in the long term vision of Dusk, or medium to long term, let's say. But someone was asking, why are you bullish on Dusk for 2026? And I'm not sure how much we can say about our plans for 2026, but if there is something we can share about it, why are you bullish on Dusk for 2026, and why everyone else should also be bullish on Dusk for 2026?
Okay, well, from the perspective of Dusk alone, I think maybe we're not saying it directly, but I think the reason why people are bullish is pretty straightforward. We can actually do something on Dusk. I mean, let's be realistic about that, right? We'll actually be able to do something on Dusk. When we have DuskEVM out, we have people coming and building, people coming and creating opportunities. And then when you've got stocks, we've got people can buy and sell and trade these applications. We've got stable coins coming, and all these different interactions that come with that. So purely from the perspective of the Dusk community, it's like an on switch, an off on switch has been flicked to the on direction. We can now start doing stuff. That's great. And as more and more people do stuff, that's more TVL, that's more transactions, that's more staking rewards. A lot of reasons why people here in this community, in this conversation right now, should be excited. Why should people outside of the community, which is a also very important question, because of course we need to get outside of our echo chamber and we need to get people in. And I think that the power of that comes from the fact that we have these regulatory licenses lined up behind us. And I know that sometimes it gets not so interesting for the community to talk about it. I understand it's not the most interesting thing. For me it is, but I'm a freak. But I do think that it is very important. And as I mentioned with the DLT TSS, which you talked about earlier, with the fact that we know that the stocks application fits exactly within currently existing MiFID II and MiFIR regulations, meaning that you can come and buy and sell and trade assets in a perfectly regulated way just from your phone, just from a wallet. This is very exciting, and then you don't get that same level of question marks that you get with a lot of people in our space, where it looks cool, but like, is this okay? Is it legal? And even some people might not care, but you do care when somebody comes along later on, and some regulator comes along later on and says, yeah, you're not going to be able to cash that in because you shouldn't have been allowed to buy it in the first place. Nobody wants that. And so I do think this is very exciting, and I think 2026 is going to be a great year.
Awesome. Looking forward to the rest of this year, but also to next year. Exciting things coming.
Oh yeah, we're not done yet. Yeah.
We're definitely not done yet. Just getting started. Well, in a sense. Now, the next question is, someone is saying that I assume upcoming listings after DuskEVM are confidential, but what information can you share about this in view of the kind of listings or the certainty or maybe the timing?
Sorry, say that again, one more time.
So basically the question is, everyone knows there's upcoming listings coming after the release of DuskEVM. Is there anything you can tell us about the upcoming listings, maybe the type of listings, or anything in terms of the timing of when we should expect more listings to be to come?
Yeah, I mean, I don't, I hate to hide behind the confidential thing. What can I say? What can I say? Yes, listings are coming. It's obviously going to be very important to have listings of the DuskEVM side of things. That will come. We have a couple in the pipeline that will come, I would say, between DuskEVM and stocks. I can say that much. And I think quite interestingly, we're also in fairly advanced talks, I would say, about an exchange in the US, which I think is quite a potential game changer as well, because that opens up a really very interesting market, which I know you have questions on later. So, yes, between Dusk EVM and stocks, I would expect we would be able to announce a couple.
Okay. Okay. Exciting. Thank you, Ryan. I know there's not always a lot of information we can release beforehand, but it's good to know at least, sort of the area of when we should expect it. Now, next question would be, and this comes with a preface, so let me just read that out. With the new Genius Act, it looks like the US is stepping on the gas to make the USD the number one stablecoin, which looks to be way more dominant in on-chain market than it currently is in fiat. Europe reacted this week with some of their plans for a CBDC that may run on a decentralized network like Ethereum or Solana. Dusk has Quantos as partner and Europe as focus, but with 98% of stablecoin in USD, it seems like we're missing out on a huge market. What's the current thinking around stablecoins, and are there plans or talks to bring a large USD stablecoin native to Dusk?
Okay, that's a big question. Yeah. Genius Act is very exciting. I think we've been sitting in Europe. I mean, certainly, I think we can say under the last presidency, we were sitting in Europe talking about building a regulated blockchain space, and it looked like the US was kind of continuing on its usual kind of hit and hope approach of like, we'll sort of see what happens, and maybe people will go to jail, maybe they won't. And then you've suddenly got a very quite crypto friendly administration in place, passing legislation, which is quite a turnaround. It's very exciting. I think the same goes for stablecoins as goes for general fiat currency, if we're being strict. I mean, we often see a lot of stuff written in the newspapers about various countries and organizations talking about building an alternative to the US dollar. We need an alternative to the US dollar. We need some sort of trade currency. US dollar isn't going anywhere. Let's be clear about that. And because it's not going anywhere, US dollar stable coins are not going anywhere. I do think 98% is high, and I think there will be a bit of a rebalancing, largely because of the fact as you get things like these DLT-based MTFs coming online in Europe, more regulation, especially on the MiCA of CASPs, you create now much more opportunities for regulated trading of euro-backed stablecoins. I think right now maybe just quite don't have the opportunity for the same level of usage, but as it starts to come on board, CBDC as well, I think, as the person asked, we will see a rebalancing as this 98% drops and other currencies start to drop in. So that's just my general feelings on the space. As for getting a USD dominated stablecoin on Dusk, yeah, I think we have to. I think that's pretty clear. Now, it's not mission critical for us, although let's be clear about that, because DLT based trades from entities based in the Netherlands and in Europe are denominated in euros. So the most important thing for us in terms of like removing blockers to getting people trading and getting people transacting is a euro-backed stablecoin. So that will always be our focus. But yes, we would be silly if we didn't look for a USD-backed stablecoin, and we do intend to find one. Yes. I can't say we're in a major discussion for one right now, but what we are trying to do is come up with a, without going too much into details, come up with a way that we could perhaps accept USD stablecoin without necessarily having it integrated into Dusk, if that makes sense. So at least that will solve the problem in the short to medium term.
Okay, got it. Yeah, it's good to hear that there are discussions around it, and I think Hein did mention that indeed we're looking into it, into getting USD stablecoins on DuskEVM.
Yeah.
So that's great to get more info around that. The next question is around the European market, and someone is asking that we've been talking with European financial institutions for years, and how do we see their attitude today when it comes to permissionless versus permission chains, and has that appetite shifted compared to a few years ago? Based on
Sorry,
our
you
thoughts.
broke up in the middle of that. Could you repeat the question, George?
Oh, my bad. Of course. So since we have been talking with European financial institutions for years, someone is asking, how do we see their attitude today when it comes to permissionless versus permission chains, and has their appetite shifted compared to a few years ago?
I think we see a difference, a distinction between companies that are. Okay, first off, let's say there's been a dramatic increase over the last year, 2 years in education within large companies, like actually getting to learn this stuff. Not necessarily hiring blockchain experts, but perhaps having research groups that look into it, having innovation groups that look into it. And that's been a big help. Because I think, as we all know, a permission chain, especially if you're going for, I don't know, some sort of hyperledger type thing, it's not a real blockchain, right? We all know that, right? But it's a safe blockchain, right? If you're the kind of, the pointy head boss in Dilbert, that famous cartoon, who comes in one day, he's read a trade magazine, and says, we should have a blockchain. It's a nice, safe, risk-free blockchain thing to launch without it really being a blockchain. That was a joke. That was a meme for a very long time. I think European companies are better educated now, and I think they realize that you're, if anything, limiting yourself by going with something like Hyperledger or Corda, because it's basically just building an in-house thing that doesn't interact with anyone. What I hope we will see perhaps is maybe more consortia coming up. This was something that happened indeed in Hong Kong. Someone mentioned the flag behind me. This was something that the monetary authority in Hong Kong pushed, was the idea of getting groups of companies together and saying, okay, we're going to build like a single interface upon which we can all react, and we're going to choose to put it on this chain or this chain, and building like use case specific consortiums that could get together and build on a single chain. And then in that case, you can use a permissionless chain because you're all using it and you're all agreeing on using it. So I think there has been a shift in that case. I think the ability to increased understanding of ability to move across chains has also helped, because I think before the worry with a lot of companies was that they would get trapped. They would build on a system but didn't interact with anybody else, and then would just have to rebuild everything later on. There's a better understanding now, I think, about locking and wrapping and cross-chaining, which helps a lot as well. So education has really gone up, but there's still a long way to go. Let's put it that way.
Well, it's good to see that more institutions are at least curious in learning more about blockchain technologies and are open to implementing them, or at least open to the idea of implementing them and then seeing how that goes. It's
If I can just add
progress.
one more point on, and I know I'm going to be slightly
Please.
talking over you because of the time delay, so I'm just going to keep going. But one of the other things that was also very encouraging is that we've seen the formation of increasing numbers of foundations that are dedicated to the commitment of standards. So particularly token standards, like saying, let's all get together at least and agree on a token standard for a particular type of thing, like security tokens. We see more of these popping up as well. That's also very encouraging, because that can be applied across chains. So that's great. Apologies.
Amazing. No, and thank you. Awesome. Thank you, Ryan. The next question is, since we are, we have a strategic relationship with NPEX, and Emanuele Francioni is not only our CEO, but also the CTO and NPEX. Someone is wondering what is Emanuele also doing at NPEX as the CTO?
What's he doing at MPEX as a CTO?
Right.
No, yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah, MPEX, as mentioned before, this actually links back into the question I mentioned before. So, MPEX is a traditional multilateral trading facility, a stock exchange. That doesn't mean necessarily that they are coming at this from a perspective of being a high tech firm. They're a traditional stock exchange, and their internal systems need an awful lot of upgrades and updates in order to step into this DLT based world. That's not to say that there's anything particularly wrong with their systems right now, but they could be a lot better. And there are reporting, for example, just to give a simple example, there are reports that have to be given to the regulators on what kind of volume of trades have happened and blah blah blah. And you don't want to be in a situation where you have a DLT based system like stocks or something else is sending one set of reports, and then their current system is sending another set of reports because they still have their off-chain business, of course. And then the regulators are getting two different sets of numbers and repeat numbers, and trades are being counted twice or not counting at all. So all this stuff is, I'm sure, extremely boring, but it all has to be fixed. And so Emanuele is taking the lead on taking on this, like I say, quite mind-numbing work of making sure that their systems are ready for this 21st century of DLT based assets that will sit alongside their current assets, so that they have a fully up to date modern system for helping us to lead the charge for decentralized assets in Europe.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Um, the next question would be around the dApp, and I'm not sure how much you can share around the dApp that we're working on, but is there anything you can share around the development of the app and what pieces are currently being worked on, what still needs to be done, or how is the UI looking along? Anything you can share around the dApp?
Well, I can say it's looking good. I guess the proof is in the pudding. It would be nice if we could get something to show to the community. I'll have to see if there's something that we can. But I can say that the user face looks good. It's very user friendly. We're focusing on how can I say? I think we take inspiration from some of the great crypto applications out there, from some of the dexes, from some of the exchanges, from some of the dApps, rather than the sort of existing app-based stock exchange or app-based brokers. I have for example, I use I have a broker, a traditional broker, and I can say that their application, it does the job, but boy, does it look like it was invented before mobile apps were invented. I mean, it is just very bad and very user unfriendly. We don't want it to look like that. We want it to look nice. We want it to look smooth. We don't want anybody to press anything by accident. We want everything to be clearly explained. And so that's the focus on good UI and a good UX. And it should be very simple. It should be the simple matter of having a list of all the possible assets that you can buy, just like most of the things that everybody in the community already deals with. And if you can buy it, the button is there. If you can't buy it, then the button is grayed out. And so there's something else that you need to do. And you click buy, you set the number, and it tells you how much it is, and you have an option of where that money is being sent from. And we just want it to be as simple as possible. That's the main driving function, and we believe it will be. And then it's a matter, like I say, of filling it with assets. We already have a couple of agreements on the table to fill with assets from various sources, not just MPEX. And then it's about sitting back and letting people get involved with that and start trading.
Awesome. Yeah, I guess we're going to find out more about the different sources closer to the launch, but that sounds exciting, and it's great to hear that the UI should be as user friendly as possible. Of course, I'm not sure if you can tell us anything around how the launch of the dApp will look like and the rollout of that. I believe Thomas mentioned in the past that it's going to be a phased approach. Um, Anything
Yeah.
else you'd like to add on that?
I think phased approach is already pretty self-explanatory, but I'm happy to explain it again, what that means by a phased approach. The phased approach would be is that you would expect that the first version of stocks that comes out will largely give access to the assets held by our closest partners. So obviously MPEX is one, potentially a couple of others. And then as we add in assets from other third parties, this will be the future phases. That makes sense. As well as probably, I would also expect there would be a new phase for new types of paying for stuff. So new payment methods as well would also be a phase.
Yeah, thank you for the clarification.
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
the next question is more so around different marketing activities, but one in specific. Someone is curious if after the launch of the dApp and DuskEVM, are we also looking into doing long form interviews with any major crypto YouTube content creators or large YouTube creators?
We'll have to see if that fits. I think, personally speaking, I think that more useful for the community would be to have, if you want to, if there's an interest in long form content, which is something that we separately need to assess. I think more useful long form content for the community would probably be with people involved in the companies and the assets which they can now buy, sell, and trade on the stocks platform. I think that's investor knowledge. You want to get to know who are these companies that we're investing in, who are these issuers of these products that we're buying, and I think that's the more useful information. However, if we believe that there is utility to deal with these YouTube people and other such influencers, then obviously we'll look for opportunities to do so. We always keep our options open, our doors always open. If anybody is listening or watching to this and wants to talk about it, obviously reach out and get in touch. We have a lot of conversations going on. We'll make decisions when we realize what the market really needs.
Makes sense. Yeah. Thank you, Ryan. Um,
Sure.
we actually are getting through a lot of questions here. This is awesome.
We've been
And
very
it's
efficient.
very efficient indeed. And it's not even the top of the hour. Look at that. And we have, let me see, just a couple of questions left. I'm just keeping a bunch which we have already answered through previous questions. But the next one would be, I guess we already kind of touched on this, but I guess we can make a sort of a conclusion on what the overview plan for this year and next year is for Dusk in terms of deliverables, which, we already touched on DuskEVM, the dApp, getting the DLT, TSS license, licenses, and all of the sort. But if you can kind of present the overview plan in a sort of step-by-step format or a sorting of sorts.
Sure. Well, you've hit the three pillars right there, right? Dusk EVM, stocks, and the DLTR. Those are the three pillars, and everything else is sub points within that. Let's make it into a story, shall we? A narrative, so that it's simple to think about. So Dusk EVM is first, as mentioned, because we require EVM compatibility, so that we can be more easy to build on top of, so that we can integrate with external parties. This includes obviously bridges and DEX and lending protocols and so on and so forth. So there's the EVM launch itself, and then the various partnerships that come with that. Those will be like step 1, 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D. Some of those will be batched together, of course. So that's the first step. The first step is to have a Dusk upon which we can build and we can move around, and which is just working really well. Okay. Then step 2 is stocks. This is tokenized financial assets that people can buy, sell, and trade. And that's, I think, pretty self-explanatory. And again, that comes as 2A, 2B, 2C, 2D, which are all the different external providers of assets that come in. So that's the phases there. And then the DLTR is step 3, because what the DLTR does is allow us to do two separate things. The first one is to take potentially some of those already issued stocks assets and to slightly move them into the category of being more natively issued, which is a more of a technical thing. And then, but maybe more excitingly, the second thing is it allows us to actually issue digital native assets. So this is where financial providers can come and actually launch assets on Dusk through MPEG that are digitally native, that they don't exist anywhere else. They don't exist in a CSD somewhere. They're not sitting in a paper certificate somewhere. They exist only here. And the people who hold them right now are the only people that hold them. And that's, I think, the missing step of the puzzle. So if you think about it in a narrative structure, first it's about getting a blockchain that works, that can be built upon, that flows nice and smoothly. Then it's about getting the assets on top. That's how you start building the value. And then the final step is about making those assets much more digitally native so they can flow easier. And so we can have some exclusive stuff that only people who are using Dusk, that are involved in Dusk, can get their hands on.
Superb. Thank you, Ryan. Yeah, that's that's a good way to describe it, just so we have, there's no confusion around it. It provides a proper narrative in place. Now, surprisingly, I have just one more question left on my list. But while I ask this question, I want to ask anyone in the audience, if you guys do have any more questions, please do put them in chats, and then we'll try to get to them. But the last question on my list, and you actually already answered part of the question, which was how bullish you are on Dusk. But they also were wondering, on a scale of 1 to 10, how bullish are you on Dusk and why? And you already explained the why. As for reference, Hein also gave it a 9.5, I believe, in the last hangout we had with him. But curious to possibly end it on this note.
Okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm 12. Let's put it that way. I'm bullish. I mean, that's a bit of a joke. I suppose you can't be more than 10, but I'm very, very bullish. And yes, because of the reasons that you said before. I think I read that question, and I think somebody added the tag and explain, not necessarily in the diplomatic way that you usually answer questions. I am aware that I do that naturally. That's just my natural state. I get that. But I'm bullish for the reasons that I said before, without needing to be diplomatic about it. It's very exciting that you will have financial assets that you can buy, sell, and trade here on Dusk. That's great. And actually something useful. I mean, it's all very well to talk about building a new financial system. That's what a lot of us in the industry, not just Dusk, but a lot of companies do. We're building a new financial system, a new financial structure. That's great. But we need value. We need value. We need monetary value coming into the system. And like it or lump it, that value is sitting in traditional financial assets. It's not sitting in NFTs. It's not sitting in this kind of thing. It's sitting in traditional financial assets. And we need to get that over here. We need to get that on chain. And we need to get it into the hands of normal people who, maybe don't want to deal with this kind of dated apps that I mentioned before, going through mountains and mountains of paperwork to get a broker account, right? Without having to give 10, 20, 30% to some agent because it's too difficult to figure it out. And that's the real problem that we're here to solve. And that's great. And I'm very excited by that. And I think that's something to be very bullish about.
Perfect. Great answer, Ryan. Thank you. I see that Joachim said that I missed a question around the 2025 Q4 deliverables. I believe, you already went over what our upcoming plans are, but let me just give me a second to try and find a specific question. But I would assume the question is around what are our goals in terms of deliverables for this year.
EVM and stocks. I think that's a straightforward answer.
EVM and stocks. Yep. Perfect. Those two are definitely in the pipeline. Of course, in between those, there's listing, partner announcements, and the sort, but these are the two big ones. Awesome. Perfect. Well, that would be the end of this Team Hangout, unless anyone has any more questions. But we are approaching the 1 hour mark, so I think we'll end it off here and then do a part 2 if necessary with Ryan again. But surely we're going to have Ryan again on future Team Hangouts. This was a very good one. Thank you guys for joining. Thank you for the good questions. And thank you, Ryan, for being here with us. And sorry for anyone that is listening to this on the recording, because there's definitely a delay between the camera and the voice, but apologies.
Great. Thank you very much, George, and thanks everybody for listening in. That's great. I see a lot of positive comments. That's very nice. I did read everything, by the way. I was keeping an eye on it during the course of the thing. So, yeah, thanks very much. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you again soon.